In 1971, 4 years before Jaws was released in theaters, a lesser-known film made its way into the psyche of the American public. Blue Water, White Death was a documentary directed by Peter Gimble and James Lipscomb. It documented a crew of photographers and adventurers as they go searching for a great white, believing it to be the last real predator on Earth. The group runs into many obstacles in finding a great white, slaughtering a whale day after day to use as bait. It's honestly difficult to watch given what we know now about the delicate balance of the sea's ecosystems. Nonetheless, the film is a fascinating insight into the human perspective of these animals in the 1970s. It has an almost horrific feeling to it, beginning with blood in the water and this description.
The great white shark, Carcharodon carcharias. Common names, white death, man-eater. Remarks. Most dangerous cold-blooded predator, credited with more attacks on boats and men than any other shark.
After a months-long journey to several exotic locales, the crew are able to lure 2 great whites to their boat in Australia, capturing for the first time on camera the ferocity and power of this predator. The film was well received in theaters and was broadcasted on television during the 1970s through the 1980s, showing viewers at home what may lurk below the murky depths.
The producers of the movie are Richard Zanuck and David Brown. I wanted to convey the visceral fear people have of being eaten. And I asked David Brown if that same fear was what he wanted the movie to illustrate.
Oh, indeed. It's the shark's eye view of the human body, the fear of disfigurement, of being maimed, of being...
When Richard Zanuck and David Brown discovered the novel Jaws, written by Peter Benchley, it was a story about the misery of human relationships, a broken marriage, and corruption in a small seaside community. The shark is just secondary in this story, a metaphor that brings together the characters to defeat their collective darkness. But still, the novel had wide appeal, and big books make big movies, so Zanuck and Brown put all their trust in the 26-year-old Steven Spielberg, and an epic was made.
It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws.
This story, which wildly deviated from the novel it was based on, features the shark as the main villain and the chief of police, Martin Brody, as the hero. Brody is the American everyman, who is sandwiched between a man of science and a man of faith. In the moment where it's most important, Brody is willing to sacrifice himself, physically and socially, for his community. In the novel, Brody's wife was having an affair with the scientist, but the movie removes this point entirely, opting for the metaphor over the literal. What I mean by this is that the shark itself represents castration. The prologue of the film shows a young man chasing a seductress into the water, and this act of seduction is punished by bloody thrashing, leaving the young woman in pieces, feasted upon by crabs. After this, the focus of the monster shifts. Aside from the opening scene, every being threatened by the shark are men and boys. In this way, the shark is gendered, a dark feminine that seeks to castrate the men. In Jungian mythology, the terrible mother is an inverse of the creative power of the womb, made into a destructive and deadly power. She is the dark twin sister of the Great Mother, the power that gave life to all. The mouth of the terrible mother is also known as the vagina dentata, the castrating and lethal vagina. And so the Shark of Jaws seeks to end the line of men in this island community with its destructive dark feminine power. This archetype shows up in many places. You might be familiar with this one.
In this world, the conspiracy theory is Hollywood, liberal elites, and Hillary Clinton are murdering children in ritual sacrifices, harvesting the chemical compound from human children, drinking their blood to ingest adrenochrome, because it has some sort of elixir of life properties. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and you're telling me it may not be true.
When vying for a position of power, women become the terrible mother who will eat your children with their destructive vagina dentata. The most telling slogan in this campaign in 2016 was, "Beware the beast Hildebeest Clinton and its vagina of manicide." In defeating this monster, the hero experiences a ritual transition from boy to man or from man to wise man. But really, this tale of maintaining the patriarchy is reenacting an ancient one that was about destroying matriarchal figures. The retelling of it reinforces the patriarchal norm and ritualizes violence against feminine archetypes.
Jaws 2. The terror continues.
In patriarchal mythology, the hero must disable or break this dark feminine power, often by forcing something into its mouth or vagina. This piercing through often ends in a violent, bloody explosion, even when an explosion doesn't really make sense. The masculine power overcomes the feminine. In an essay titled Jaws as Patriarchal and Ecocidal Myth, Jane Caputi explains how the three major religions have roots in the same Babylonian epic. In this story, Tiamat, the goddess of sea and salt water, is depicted as both beautiful and terrifying. She is the goddess of chaos, but also the mother of all of the deities. She and Apsu, the god of the groundwater or freshwater, were the firsts, and together they create Mesopotamia, the first world, a land that has at its heart the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, saltwater and freshwater mixed together. So in this myth, we have a creator or birthing goddess who is in a sacred marriage to a fertilization god, and they bring forth many gods. Then later we have Marduk, who is a god associated often with agriculture. His symbol is the spade, and he often wields storms, winds, and floods as his weapons. Many historians agree that Marduk was a lesser god at first, and a lot of his associations get mixed up in various stories until he replaces Tiamat as the god of creation. The story basically goes like this. Tiamat and Apsu went to war with their offspring. How this war started is debatable, as there are many versions, but generally what is agreed upon is that Apsu is killed and Tiamat then transforms into a sort of vengeful goddess. Only one of her children is able to slay her, Marduk, god of storms. They marched to war. They drew near to give battle. The Lord Marduk spread out his net and caught her in it. The evil wind which followed him, he loosed it in her face. She opened her mouth, Tiamat, to swallow him. He drove the evil wind so that she could not close her lips. He let fly an arrow, it pierced her belly. Her inner parts he clove, he split her heart. He rendered her powerless and destroyed her life. Tiamat's body then creates, or perhaps recreates, the world. The origin story, the creation myth, was replaced, and so was the creation deity. In the myth of the American superhero, Robert Jewett and John Shelton Lawrence write extensively about Jaws, saying the American monomyth typically begins and ends in an Edenic setting. The movie portrays the island as an unproblematic area for children's play, that is, until the malevolent shark arrives. And it is the one man, Martin Brody, who indeed makes the difference for the community in saving it from this threat. In the final scene, Brody swims back to a broad, deserted, paradise-like beach on Amity Island, from whence evil has been expelled. Returning Eden to its paradise-like state by expelling the evil from it is essential to the American monomyth.
In 1829, Andrew Jackson was elected U.S. president. He believed that Native Americans were savages and had no rights to their land, and began proceedings to remove the Cherokee from the southern states to clear the way for white settlement.
Unique to horror or monster movies, however, is the amount of blood and how that blood is used in atonement. Without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sins. The righteous will rejoice when he sees the vengeance. He will bathe his feet in the blood of the wicked. Men will say, surely there is a reward for the righteous. Surely there is a God who judges on earth. Another related myth is that of Jezebel, the apostate who was thrown from a window to her death, and her corpse trampled by horses and eaten by dogs. Just as crabs come to pick at the remainder of the temptress's body in Jaws, the dogs of Jezreel feast on Jezebel's bloody remains. This occurs later with the monster itself, as the birds flock to what's left of it. The movie Jaws was so laced with mythical imagery that the shark movie genre has remained iconic, often using the same symbols over and over again. In fact, the way in which the man-eating shark is defeated is often exactly the same. And I mean exactly the same. 3 low-budget films between 1981 and 1995 reused the exact same footage of an obviously fake shark being blown up. Jaws, as a franchise, died pretty quickly. The second film is worth watching since it includes more of the same characters and features more interesting parts of Amity Island, but the series then takes a dive. In Jaws 3D, the shark explodes, tumbling the jaws of the shark into the audience. The genre sort of lives on in the direct-to-video realm and even abroad. It didn't see a true revival until 1999 with Deep Blue Sea. This is a fun watch that I recommend, but I am going to spoil it. This movie uses the underwater facility setting from Jaws 3D and takes it to a whole new level. Carter Blake is the first character to be introduced as the Shark Wrangler. He's our everyman, and even though he's not supposed to be the main character, I would argue that he is because he's introduced first and the audience is going to despise the main protagonist, Susan. More on that later. Susan McAllister is conducting experiments on mako sharks with the intention of curing Alzheimer's in humans.
We're this close to the reactivation of a human brain cell.
Their pharma financier, played by Samuel L. Jackson, decides to visit the facility after one of the sharks escapes. In a spectacular series of events, the facility is flooded and infiltrated by the sharks, and the skeleton crew that's left must try to escape. There's also this character nicknamed Preach, who's played by LL Cool J, who becomes incredibly important later on. Now, Susan is very cold in demeanor, especially contrasted by Carter's warmness. She's a man-eater, she's a shark, and he's a shark wrangler, so there's some tension going on there. We eventually learn that the sharks have been genetically engineered to have larger brains, which makes them incredibly smart.
Just what the hell did you do to those sharks?
When Susan reveals this to the rest of the crew, they're not happy.
You stupid bitch.
There's also a theme about eating your own kind, first with how the sharks that have larger brains and think smarter feast upon the less evolved shark. Later with Samuel L. Jackson admitting that he only survived an avalanche because he ate his comrades. The theme is also reflected in how Susan is willing to sacrifice or devour members of her team in order to progress Alzheimer's research.
Without that data, everyone dying isn't just tragic. It's useless.
Death is always useless, Doctor.
Just as Tiamat was fated to die because she killed her own children, in patriarchal myth, eating your own means that you must die. There are a bunch of fun scenes where the humans face off with the sharks and either outsmart them or get eaten. Only 3 humans and 1 shark make it out. Susan, Carter, and Preach reach the surface. This is where things get weird. In a moment of desperation, Susan cuts her hand and jumps into the water, acting as bait so that Carter can get a clear shot of the last remaining shark. She says,
Come to Mama.
She created them and now she intends to destroy them. Sound familiar? But Susan doesn't make it out alive and is eaten by her own creation. Carter and Preach then work together to take out the last shark, and then the whole thing ends rather abruptly and with a complete tonal change.
Take me back to the ghetto.
Amen.
Funny enough, the original ending of the film had Susan surviving and even had a happy kissy ending with her and Carter, but a test audience didn't like it because they considered Susan to be the reason the sharks existed in the first place, and they didn't think she deserved a happy ending. In an interview with director Rennie Harlin, he says that one of the notes they got back from the test audience was, Kill the Bitch. Just 1 month before the film was to be released, they did a one-day reshoot and made Susan get eaten, leaving the man of faith and the rugged everyman to be the heroes. Deep Blue Sea truly is a great example of why women who seek power or progress must die, and they must be punished as an example. The patriarchy, which includes patriarchal religions, must be maintained. Curiously, the direct-to-video Blue Demon had a similar story, but with a happy kissy ending. But then it sort of insinuates that the heroine is the shark, so...
We meant to take the next step in evolution, but we created a monster.
I see. And would you say it was possible for this sort of thing to happen again?
Honestly, Senator, I don't know.
There's also this Egyptian film called Mako, where the main protagonist, a director, sort of sacrifices her crew in order to win a film award. Although it's not necessarily a part of the American monomyth, I do think it's worth mentioning. In the end, though she lost everyone, she has the one thing she truly wanted, and it seems as though she planned it, as though she made an offering to the sea goddess. Then you have movies like Megalodon and The Black Demon, which include very traditional heroic tales where the hero sacrifices themselves in the end to save the world from this monster that's threatening Eden. 47 meters down, 47 meters down uncaged, The Reef Stalked, Open Water Adrift, and Open Water Cage Dive are all survivor horror films that offer one particularly interesting trope called Tertullian ecstasy. Tertullian ecstasy, simply put, is the enjoyment in seeing the punishment of the wicked. Tertullian was an early Christian author who argued that there was no greater entertainment than seeing the wicked punished for their sins. Unlike sexual ecstasy, which is communal and creative, Tertullian ecstasy can be enjoyed alone and requires no creative effort. The camera cues the audience to recognize targets of retribution by scenes of evil behavior and exclusion from the community. This de-identification of interest and inversion of mutual respect and attraction blocks any sympathetic response that the audience might have when the wicked suffer their punishment. At the moment the evil of the marked ones becomes unbearable and the desire for punishment reaches its climax, the moralized forces of catastrophe provide a kind of retributive coitus with an ecstatic release. The cheering of audiences in such scenes is evidence of a ritual release from tension. And with this tropey group is one more trope I have to highlight, the "you silly girls" trope. At least that's what they felt like they were saying when I was watching them.
Does my butt at least look cute in this?
The "you silly girls" trope is found in both 47 meters down and 47 meters down uncaged. In these films, the protagonists are pretty, innocent, and stupid. There is no restoring Eden in these films, as the sharks are never defeated. The girls are eaten and horribly maimed on camera. In the first film, the protagonist dreams of becoming a hero, of saving her friend from the sharks and getting them both to the surface. But since it was just a dream, she's not a hero at all and must be saved. The second film goes out of its way to punish the girls in horrific ways. It's a condescending, exploitative, bloody, and hateful treatment of young women. With this trope, we've gone far beyond what a shark movie can be. So far that we've stumbled into an over-budgeted bikini horror exploitation film that disguises itself as a survival movie. And thus is the tale of the shark movie, a genre that tries so hard to be Jaws that it ends up recycling the same old patriarchal myth. Oh wait, I almost forgot about... The Meg employs a lot of the same tropes as any shark movie. The audience doesn't feel as bad for those who die because those individuals are given more annoying or immoral traits.
It's everything sexual with you guys.
Sex, food, power, and money.
Blow it up now.
There's also a large death count at a place called Fun Island in the second film, a sort of nod to human excess in that a whole natural island was incorporated for human entertainment and leisure, until, of course, nature bites back. But the Meg series also does some things that other shark movies don't. Firstly, the Eden that's established is a previously undiscovered deeper part of the Mariana Trench, isolated and essentially walled off from the rest of the ocean. It's completely undisturbed and unspoiled by humans. By being present in this Eden, the humans release an ancient predator into their world. Secondly, the community is international. Although much of the cast are white Americans, the diversity here is refreshing. It's made clear that the struggle is between all of humanity and, well, themselves.
We need to find it and kill it.
No, we can't. We should explore non-lethal options first.
For the Meg or for us?
While the shark is a problem to be dealt with, it's not the fault of the shark. The humans desperately are trying to clean up their mess in both films.
Do you miss your mom, Big Fish?
Third, our heroine is ultimately a child. Over the course of the two films, no one person is more important than Mei Ying. She represents the next generation who will seek to do better by learning from the adults' mistakes.
I see that you're angry, but I believe that this is a reasonable and responsible decision.
Stop the dive.
And finally, the film avoids upsetting the audience. The genre steers far away from horror and generally picks up into a spectacular, exciting adventure by the middle of the first film. I'll try not to spoil too much because I truly love these movies and I hope you watch them if you haven't. But it's safe to say that even though these are shark movies, they constantly seek to go beyond the original tropes and themes.
We did what people always do. Discover, and then destroy.
A big theme of the Meg series is life will find a way, and that extends to all of us. Adaptation is not just for the plants and the animals. It's also up to us to adapt as well. Adapt to nature, adjust our impact as we gain more understanding of the world. Chaos, wildness, and unbridled sexuality can result in creation, order, and understanding. Our need to see a binary is what keeps us from perceiving this. But if we keep revisiting the same story, it's going to evolve into something entirely different, where we no longer kill the monster, but try to understand it and befriend it. For everything that sharks have gone through, it's not fair that we have made them to be the ultimate predators of the deep. It's not fair that we make their likeness stalk bikini-clad women for the gaze of a horny and bloodthirsty audience. And it's not fair that we make them into something to blow up, to outwit, or to avoid and be frightened of forever. The damage that Jaws has done to ritualize masculine violence against feminine power is just as important as what it has done to sharks. When I was a kid, my grandfather had a rule. When he was in his living room, he controlled the television. It was either go play outside or watch what he was watching. This is how I was introduced to the movie Orca.
The orca's mouth has 48 teeth set in 2 impressive rows.
Orca was released just 2 years after Jaws and follows a similar yet more tragic pattern of events. The monster in this story is bigger and more powerful than the monster in Jaws, and perhaps more importantly, this monster has a clearer will. He seeks revenge on the humans that killed his pregnant mate. In the end, the whale successfully kills all who were responsible or who got in his way, leaving the one human alive that had sympathy for him. This movie is not very good from a critical point of view, but it left a mark on me since it seemed as though the monster was the hero all along. The horror of that stuck with me. No matter how scared I was of this monster, I also felt immense sympathy for it. When man interrupts or attempts to control nature rather than working alongside it, they do incredible harm to us all. Although there are certainly problems with this story, it at least attempts to reconcile the struggle between man and beast while acknowledging the usual ritual is flawed. Environmentalist Rachel Carson is quoted as saying, "Man has long talked somewhat arrogantly about the conquest of nature. Now he has the power to achieve his boast. It is our misfortune, it may well be our final tragedy, that this power has not been tempered with wisdom, but has been marked by irresponsibility, that there is all too little awareness that man is a part of nature, and that the price of conquest may well be the destruction of man himself. Most eloquently, Caputi states that this approach to nature invariably comes back to bite us in the ass. Because our belief that masculine power, ordained by the heavens, is somehow more powerful than nature, can and will destroy us. It rears its ugly head when politicians claim that miracles will solve great problems such as extreme global temperatures or deadly pandemics, when they claim that no action is needed because someone somewhere will come along to take up a holy weapon against the darkness and sacrifice themselves for us all. This is the myth of Jaws, and the myth that every shark movie thereafter must contend with.
These animals are not the great powerful monsters that some people have made them out to be over the years. I don't know who did it, but he should deserve the speaking to.
Though it launched a significant literary, cinematic, and scientific career, Benchley has admitted he couldn't, in good conscience, write Jaws today. So he spent the last 30 years studying sharks.
Luckily, we're starting to find examples that move beyond Jaws. Disaster, horror, survival, and adventure genres that all play with this monster man-eating shark. And in exploring what the shark represents, we might be able to finally atone for all of the damage that has been done to both nature and that dark, vengeful goddess inside us all.